So, Streams of Silver is the second book in the original Icewind Dale trilogy, and it's not bad, honestly, as far as stories go. But if you thought the Crystal Shard was maybe a bit derivative, then you're in for a treat today, because Streams of Silver is a lot of stories, perhaps most notably and most obviously The Hobbit, actually. But I think, like, in a lot of ways, I think people tend to take things a little bit too seriously when it comes to accusations of a work of fiction being a ripoff or some such. I know even I've been somewhat hard on certain works in the past, but I don't necessarily think Streams of Silver was done out of malice or neglect, shall we say. But more so, I think R.A. Salvatore was just kind of trying to. I think he intended, in some ways, to celebrate the classic fantasy stories by using his own characters and in a new and interesting setting. I certainly don't think it was. I certainly don't think it's anything to be get upset over. Um, and which is to say that this book this book revolves around the heroes of Icewind Dale. They set out to reclaim the lost homeland of Brunor Battlehammer, the dwarf warrior. His home being Mithril Hall, now the residence of a fearsome dragon. You see what I mean? Um, but it gets better because on the way to Mithril Hall, they pass through troll-infested moorlands, and they take shelter with these mysterious supernatural spellcasters, and in a they find refuge in a magical grove, full of incredibly old and wise immortals, and they do battle with all manner of barbarian tribes and goblinoid creatures. You do see what I mean, of course. And like I don't believe it's a wholesale ripoff. It doesn't come across as one as the story goes on. There's even a whole kind of Bridge of Khazad-dûm thing, because apparently Fellowship of the Ring was a bit too good to pass up either. And yet, it doesn't come across as just like a blatant copy, and it it doesn't even feel all that spiteful or upsetting. It just feels like a good story that is very, very similar to the works of J.R.R. Tolkien. But not just Tolkien. There are some other things sprinkled in for good measure. And in the end, I just think Salvatore is a good author, and he knows what he's doing here. And it it is the unique-ish characters and fascinating subplots that really make this book for me anyway. And especially since this book is the first appearance of the one and only Artemis Entreri. Artemis Entreri being this crazed, wild assassin character, super deadly, super interesting. Regis the Halfling, the thief, who we talked about before in the last video, he is on the run with this magical gemstone. And that's sort of why he joins the quest for Mithril Hall to get away from Icewind Dale and to get away from Artemis Entreri, who is after him, and who was hired by Jabba the Hutt to track down the halfling smuggler and bring him back in a nice block of carbonite. Um, and Artemis is he's just a supernaturally cool guy. He's all kinds of scary and almost too a bit of a ridiculous extreme, right? He's just so capable. He's like action movie protagonist levels of good at what he does, and yet he's a villain, which makes him obviously very terrifying. Because what you don't want to have to fight is an evil John McClane, right? But he makes up for the levels of crazy by also being just this incredibly clever, ruthless, relentless opponent who hunts down the heroes of Icewind Dale and is willing to, spoilers, but you knew that already, spoilers, he's willing to use Catty Bree to get to them. Catty Bree being another fun character who gets to shine in this book, this kind of spirited young woman who was raised by Brunor and is sort of a love interest to young Wolfgar, the classic the hero of the story. I maintain that Wolfgar is the hero of the story. And she has like a kind of fun rapport going with Wolfgar throughout, and she's an archer, a fun archer, and she kind of comes into her own after having to survive Artemis and Trary being held hostage by him and used against them. Um, Artemis is an assassin, and he's a really capable one. And even more than that, he is probably the single greatest swordsman in the world at the time. Um, and so he's a natural enemy to Dritz Duerden, who is also the single greatest swordsman in the world. They are both the two single, one and only greatest swordsmen in the world. Fair warning, the story does end in a bit of a cliffhanger of sorts, but we do have a fun duel with Dritz and Artemis, which I suppose comes as no surprise. And the duel never ends. It should interest you to know. I mean, seriously, like they're probably still fighting that same duel that was started in this book for like the entire history of the Forgotten Realms. Like that they probably, I bet they won't see each other for 5 years, and yet I promise you that duel is still somehow going on in their minds. At least they are still fi- arch enemies forevermore, still fighting that duel that is started in this book and never ends, if you know what I mean. And honestly, the actual fight scenes are they're good. Like it's not like uh like Robert E. Howard, his Conan stories had these amazing fight scenes. It's not that level, but it's still it's capable. It's interesting enough to, and you know, at, as far as things go, it's the characters that make it come alive. And Salvatore's really good at that. These two characters who are so similar and yet so different. One a pure evil human, and the other this very good natured dark elf who are both very similar to each other. It's cleverly written, I dare say. And we'll talk more about that next time. Suffice to say, Streams of Silver is, well, you could argue that it's a step down from the wacky fun of the Crystal Shard, but I still think it is well done and interesting, and it makes some terrific promises for the third and final book in the trilogy, the Halfling's Gem, in which r- poor Regis. Spoilers again, but again, you probably know that poor Regis is in trouble. He is in it. He is frozen in carbonite and by Artemis Fett, and he is being taken south to Jabba's palace, and the heroes have to go and rescue him. So Streams of Silver is worth the read for this setup alone. So yeah, bye.